Alright, welcome back everybody to Fire Emblem, Hector's hard mode. We are getting towards the end of the game at this point. Chapter 32 is, well, if we count the Gaiden mission, we are 3 from the end. So, we just got a pointless Earth Seal. I guess if we needed to level up another guy, we could do that, but I don't really have any need to level anybody up. Most of my guys are doing extremely well in terms of their overall levels slash statistics. The plan is to get to the Gaiden mission, so we are going to rush through this one. I mainly say that because I just kind of wanted to show everything in Hector's mode. I don't think it really matters in terms of, it doesn't really affect the ending or anything if you do it one way or the other. Unlike Fire Emblem 6, where your actions actually influence the way the game ends. I mean, there's I guess I should say there's a little extra. There's more to the storyline. If you have to get all the gated missions to unlock all the holy weapons. When you unlock all the holy weapons, you get extra chapters after. I don't know if you call it beat the game. You finish the game in one way without getting all the holy weapons. You get, even miss one, you will not get the extra mission slash real true ending. And then there's also a different ending depending on how you defeat the final boss. So I'm splitting my troops up into 3 different groups. We're going to send one group north, one group diagonal, one group to the east. We're doing that mainly to gather up all their experience, I guess, is the best way I can explain it. We probably are going to rely on certain characters in certain places. Heath being a big one. I need a flyer to be able to... I don't know if you could... Let me back up. There's a couple of brigands. There's one that's headed towards that center... temple area. I'm not sure you can catch him if you don't have a flyer of some sort, because, great example, we have a single hero blocking the way. So the hero is blocking my pathway forward, so I gotta eliminate him first, which again slows me down from catching up to the brigand in this center area. There's also one that's headed south, southeast, and there's one that's headed to the northern route. So one of the reasons I split my units is that, and the other one is you need I wouldn't say require a flyer. It just makes getting to these positions much easier if you have a flyer and a cavalry or some sort of horse unit. There are certain things I always seem to forget about the Fire Emblem series. This is one of them, is that as soon as you pass a certain threshold, units will automatically spawn. So in this case, those nomads, or whatever they're called, spawn immediately as soon as you pass a certain point. So I think they're in range now with their bows, but I don't think they're that big of shouldn't be that big of a problem for me. There's going to be other units that are going to spawn as we get close, as we move closer to the southeastern portion, and then I don't know if anyone spawns in the center here. I certainly know that there is a group of Wyvern riders that are gathering together right now to attack my center slash south teams. So we're going to try to keep them out of range of that. And we'll go from there. I selected the wrong person there, I think. I definitely selected the wrong person, I should say. So you can see, how this goes. That's not bad. 0% or yeah, 0 damage to Heath. Doesn't matter what percentage you're hitting at. I'm just looking to see if I can kill him or not. I cannot. Not too much to really talk about here. We've got our guys pretty well set up for this level, I think, unless something unexpected happens. You know, we've got a nice balance between axe users, sword users to a lesser degree, and then of course your lance. Again, heavy on the anima magic, as I've said before, but I don't think that'll be too big of a problem. And no dark mage users and no white mage users, so not going to be able to run into mages. I won't be able to counter them. Or no, I won't be able to counter druids if we run into druids. Most dangerous of them all, of course, Luna. Fast, heavy hitting spell that ignores resistance, so we'll have to keep an eye out for that. As well as Nosferatu, because that, if I get hit by that, like on an offensive engagement, I get hit by that, it'll negate whatever damage I deal to the dark mage user. I'm also hoping that that does not actually hit anybody, because I want to control my characters. I do not want to have not control over them. Doo-doo. So yes, this is the plan. We're going to move Hector up. We're going to move... Heath? I can't remember the name of the other... Anyways, we're going to move them up. We're going to both give them their axes, and then we're just going to let the Wyvern Riders pour onto them. I know there are some guys here that have axe reavers, but I'm more concerned about the guys with the killer lances and the particularly that horse killer. That one's more concerning to me than the others. I'm carefully checking and double checking to make sure that I don't... I want to say I don't put myself into a bad situation where, you know, they come in with an axe reaver and just mess up Hector or Heath. Not Heath. Shit, what if we call him Heath? Heath's right there. He's the dragon rider. Wyvern rider. Yeah, I'm gonna have that earth seal on me for a while now. I was watching a YouTube video the other day, and I don't know this for certain, much like I don't know anything for certain anymore, it seems, but sort of like how the Zelda timeline is, I guess, all interconnected, and then it branches at Ocarina of Time into 3 different timelines. Apparently all the Fire Emblem games, with maybe the exception of one, are all connected by a singular timeline, which I think is weird. And I don't know if that's confirmed or if that's based on a theory, but my understanding, based on what this guy was saying, was that you take Fire Emblem 9, which I think is called Radiant Dawn, and that's the one with Ike in it, and that's where the story starts, and you hear about, you know, the creation story, you hear about the different tribes, the different groups of not only humans, but also, you know, you get beastmen, bird people, like birdmen, I call them bird people, but unfortunately there's a person in Rick and Morty named Bird Person. But, you know, they're essentially humans. I mean, they have a name for them, but they are people that can transform into animals. So there's a group that can transform into dragons. There's a group that can turn into dogs, cats, wolves, I think, and then there's also birds that can do, you know, like hawks and ravens. And then the sequel to that, which I can't remember what it's called, be literally the next game. It'd be literally the sequel to it. That one is where you find out a little bit more about this dark medallion from the first game, and then you find out, you know, what it is, and you kind of actually have to sort of unite the different factions and people in that world to eventually stop the goddess from destroying the world, because she split herself into two, into her order and chaos self. And in this weird, very odd case, you're fighting for freedom, which is chaos, instead of order, which is nothingness. It's you know, obey or die sort of. I don't know, I want to say totalitarianism, but that's probably not the right word for that. So, anywho, after that, you know, the storyline continues, and there's stuff that happens, you know, involving, you know, the goddess basically opens up the world, I guess, or so. I skipped a fact in here where apparently at some point there's the flood myth comes into play, where she floods the world, but before she finishes destroying the whole world, prior to the events of Fire Emblem 9, which is, like I said, I think Radiant Dawn, she decides to stop, and she spares one continent from getting flooded. After the events of the next game, of that Fire Emblem 10, she recedes all the waters, and all the continents come back, and the different tribes of people start spreading out. So, you know, the dragons and humans are spreading out over the continents, and that's why, you know, you're not always fighting on the same continent every time. You're fighting in different places at different times. So anyways, the next game in the line, which sort of surprised me, if I remember correctly, I think it's Fire Emblem 4, which is Genealogy: The Holy War. There's a storyline that goes on where, as the dragons are spreading out, there's sort of like a dark priest or whatever, and he gets a hold of dragon blood and creates a sort of a chaos creature. The chaos creature ends up having to get defeated by the holy knights that took. This is where I'm trying to summarize what I was watching into this video, but like I'm gonna just do a great disservice. But sort of make a long story short, you have divine dragon blood, and that's what a lot of the holy weapons are made out of. In Genealogy, all of the groups of that particular continent gather together, along with I think it was Naga, who's the celestial dragon, and she gives them the ability to fight against the whatever. Maybe Naga's the evil one. I don't remember. Anyways, you end up fighting the Dark Dragon. They not only defeat them in the setup to genealogy, but also these weapons get passed down to their children who have holy blood, and that allows them to wield these weapons because they are the only ones with essentially dragon blood in them, or they have some major or minor strains of dragon blood in them that allows them to wield these weapons. Fortunately, in 4, there's also a bloodline in there that's part of the Dark Dragon that these dark mage priests, whatever you want to call them, are trying to revive. So they have to take 2 people who have minor blood in this. I think it's called lycanthropy or whatever. It sounds like a lycanthrope, like a werewolf, that is. But it's actually for dragons. And basically, by mating these 2 people with minor blood, they end up producing an offspring who has major blood, or primary, whatever they call major minor blood. And that then they use the child with major blood in this particular thing allows him to wield the dark anima, dark magic book. Allows him to become possessed by this dark dragon again, and then you have to defeat him to basically set the world back to normal. But yeah, that's what I mean. It's like apparently the games are all interconnected. So then after that, things are changing in the background as well of some of the games, and some of the dragons are forced to give up their powers because it's causing them to go insane. So they end up sealing their powers into dragon stones so that they can maintain their human form. I mean, they don't decay and go insane. They wrap their powers up into dragon stones, which allows them to become what are then known as the Manacate or the Manacute, where they're human. They have a human form, but they can tap into their dragon powers through the use of a dragon stone. And then some other stuff happens. And then I didn't really watch the rest of the video after that, but I mean, right there, you've taken out Fire Emblems 9, 10, 4, 5. And we're starting to head towards the original Fire Emblem 1, which would also lead to Fire Emblem 2. I think Fire Emblem 3 is in there somewhere as well. It may have fit between 10 and 4. But I'm not 100% sure. It was very interesting listening to the guy talk about it because, in a way, all of the stuff he was talking about made, at least up to the point that I got to, made a lot of sense. Where you'd have your creation story, you would have them basically proving to the creator of the world that no, humans can live in peace, we promise, even though they're not going to do that because inevitably what's going to happen is people are going to they're gonna look at other people or other races or whatever, and they're gonna see them and they're gonna go, these people are inferior to us, or they are lesser class people, or I'm better than them at least, and we should not have to listen to what they have to say, or we should kill all of them, or however you want to look at this, depending if you're going sort of like a person who's a moderate, who doesn't really care one way or another, or you're talking about a person who can't stand, the bird people or the wolf, the animal people, But there's a lot of evil for evil's sake, and it's sort of the point in many video games. This one has It's sort of a back setup to it where you're seeing Zephadel slowly but surely. I mean, you don't really see it well in this game, I guess, but you can sort of see where the foundation blocks are laid, where the father, or the King of Bern, doesn't trust his son, doesn't want him to come to the throne, even questions his legitimacy as his own son. The mother and the father are having squabbles about succession, which I'm told is not uncommon. At least in terms of some European households, it was not always guaranteed that your firstborn son was your heir. In a lot of cases, that was just the assumed thing because of dynastic law. But getting back to my point, you could see where, you know, they paint, at least in this game, they paint Zephadel as being like, well, I just want mom and dad and my half-sister to live in harmony. I just want everything to go back to normal. And then you, of course, hear at the end of the game, in the epilogue, that despite the fact that the assassination failed to kill the prince, it did not stop the King of Bern from attempting additional assassination attempts, apparently. And eventually, he either partly succeeded, or there was some ruse that occurred where the king ultimately succeeded, or, like I said, was near successful at poisoning his son to death, which there's probably other factors in here that are not part of the storyline that I'm familiar with anyways. I don't think they go into it in 6, and they give you sort of a very... they're sort of tangential to this story. But essentially there's some tipping point there where, you know, not only can I not abide my father anymore and his treachery, and I'm going to essentially get my revenge on him, but I'm also going to make it so the rest of the world is also going to pay for this. I'm not really sure, like I said, what exactly happens in there. I'm not... You know, Fire Emblem 6 never really came to the United States in a true capacity, so there's not like a guidebook that I could... I mean, internet's infinite, so I probably could have just learned all this stuff, but this is me sort of shooting from the hip right now when I'm talking, just sort of free associating. I'm not really thinking about, well, I should plan this out ahead of time, do the research, and then come in and tell the story. But what I'm trying to get at is, at some point he gets betrayed. He gets so revenge motivated that not only does his father have to die, which he does take care of him, according to the storyline, immediately as he peered into his son's coffin to make sure he was dead, but to punish not only them but the entirety of the continent. And it's towards the end of the game that Zephadel runs into a Manicude that I guess in this game it seems like dragons shouldn't exist, but we know that there's a hidden village of dragons. You know, people that are like half human. Some of them are half human, half dragon. Some of them are just, you know, dragon people that want to live in peace and harmony. We know they exist in this game. It's not a surprise, but in a way, the way the game makes it sound is like if any dragons were around, we have to murder them all because they're no good and they need to be put in the dragon realm where they belong. And you like sort of scratch your head there. And another theme that you see a lot, because again, I don't know the storyline super well, but you can sort of get this overarching theme either coincidentally based on, well, we're just telling the same story over and over again in different locations, but this idea that the dragons were either some form of ancient evil that needed to be contained, or there's some sort of in 4 there's a balance between the good dragon and the bad dragon, and there's yin and yang, that whole line of stuff. But in a lot of cases, what I'm trying to get at is there was a rule. There was, where dragons ruled this world. Like we used to be the protectors, the people who were in charge of this world, and humanity usurped that from us. And that's kind of true in a way, because the way I was listening to this guy talk, the way that the goddess bit when she was getting ready to leave or die, or however that worked out, you put the dragons in charge because they have such long lifespans that they ultimately would be able to, through their longevity, be able to think long term and guide the world, the whole world, not just the continents that we can see, the whole world to maybe a better, more peaceful world. Whereas humans, their life cycle, I wanted to say, is much shorter. So they're always interested in more short-sighted goals like power and money, and everything that they do has to be done much quicker. There's no long-term thought, goals, ramifications, because at the end of the day, you're going to live only so long, and then at that point you're going to pass that down to your son or daughter, and then they're going to take over and rule. But how much can you accomplish in your lifetime is sort of, I know it's very selfish goal, but how much can you accomplish in a lifetime in terms of conquering, in terms of making lots of money, etc. But the problem with the this is where the other hand of the philosophy comes in. The problem with the dragons is because they live such long lives. And I mentioned this briefly or randomly in an episode. I haven't mentioned this in such a long time, but I realized I don't like the idea of death, and I don't like the idea that we cease to exist at a certain point, because in a way I want my consciousness to continue forever, to not just suddenly not exist, because it's scary, obviously. But I came to realization, I understand why people have to die. They don't, in a way, you look at the universe, you must say God is, how can God be good if people die? People have to die because people are not good. And they talk about this with the dragons, where they live so long that they begin to look at humanity and its constant making these same mistakes generation after generation, and that they end up holding these grudges. And the grudges go from one generation to the next to the next to the next, because like I said, the dragons are so long lived and they ultimately get so set in their ways that in a lot of cases they become roadblocks to change, to improvements, the things that can be done to better the world, only because, well, they know better. This is how it's always, this is what was done, this is how it's always been done. And some of what I'm saying right now won't hold up in court, because if you play the Fire Emblem games, either from Fire Emblem 1 to whatever number they're on now, or if you were to construct a timeline from the one with Ike in it that I mentioned, Radiant Dawn, all the way to whatever is the current last game in the official, non-official timeline, you're gonna say, well, it's clear that many centuries have passed, yet they still wield white, dark, they still just wield weapons from medieval time. They still have armor, they have magics, they ride on dragons and Pegasus. What has changed, Not much, if anything. It's as if, you progressed all the way to the point when the goddess was around. You progressed all the way to the point where you figured out what metallurgy was, You figured out how to make armor, how to make weapons, how to tame and ride wyverns and Pegasus. And then at that point you stopped progressing and you just went, well, this is as good as it gets. And nothing changed after that. Technologically wise, you know what I mean? I guess if you have magic, it doesn't really matter. Because you're able to sort of, I don't know, dust stuff away in such a way that it's like, it's alright, we got magic, we'll just heal them. Like, that's fine and everything, but like, some of the lore implications about, you know, dark magic is like, in order to, if you play with dark magic, it's gonna basically make you want more power, okay? And the only way to truly master the dark is to essentially empty yourself to the point where you are no longer an individual, but you become the magic, you become the whatever, a host, a body for the magic by which it can live, but you also can wield. And it gives you, as we see at the end of this game, you know, godlike powers to be able to resurrect the dead. But at the same time, that person who's wielding it has no... I mean, not just like Athos doesn't sort of distant or disconnected from man, but he's lost everything. He doesn't have a personality. He doesn't have, I mean, he practically doesn't have a soul, you know, where, I mean, obviously can't say that for certain, but it's as if that was in order to master the dark, you must give up your soul. You must give up who you are as a person. Just kind of gross. Maybe because what differentiates you from everyone else is your personality and your soul, and that you see things in just this particular way. And while those ways may be very similar to others, it's a mix in such a way that it's never quite the same, or even if it is close to being the same, it's got a little bit more, you know, a little bit more blue in it, or it's got a little bit more, if you're talking about it, you know, like a food, it's got a little bit more salt on it, it's a little more rare, a little bit more well done. So. So we'll get back to talking about this mission here. So to the south here, as you can see, we have some Valkyries popped up. We're gonna basically stay down here until they are all gone. Once they're all gone, we will head north. Sure, other guys are gonna spawn in as we start getting closer to the main temple boss area, but my guys up in the center are kind of close to that anyway, so I'm surprised if there were going to be a surprise, what's the word I'm looking for? A surprise reinforcements, they would have already popped up at this point. You know, like as I approach the other two temples, the one to the northwest, southeast, we had, you know, nomadic troopers pop up. We had Cavaliers come down this way. Sure, we're gonna have more reinforcements just popping up randomly around here. Weird that promoted units at 10 could be so overpowered.